Hi everyone, it's Miss West again. I hope you enjoyed the Word of the Week video from yesterday. I already got a couple of you to respond with some stories and information about things that are currently unprecedented. I also want you to keep your ears open for that word in the news. I was listening to the radio this morning and I heard it like 3 times. So today's video is primarily geared at the 8th graders. Because I'm going to be annotating excerpts from the Declaration of Independence. Oh look, Edith's here. But anyone is willing, or anybody is welcome to participate in this activity. 7th graders, this is something we're going to be doing next year, so it's a great time to get a jump start on talking about early American history. Freshmen, we talked about this last year, but it's a great time to review. And older high school students, I mean, when is it not a good time to talk about early American legal documents? You should all do it. Okay, so yesterday I posted a few PDFs on the website. They are called the Declaration of Independence Chart and Questions, and then the Declaration of Independence Full Text. So the chart is what I'm going to be working on today. So if you are following along with the video, you can print that out or copy it down and then complete the chart with me. And then the full text of the Declaration of Independence is there just so that you have a reference for what the entire thing says, because we are only going to be reading some short excerpts. So without further ado, let's get into what the Declaration of Independence really means. Okay, so I want to start with a reminder of some context. So 8th graders, this page should look familiar. It's what we worked on in our notebooks right before school closed. So as a reminder, the Declaration of Independence was commissioned, which means it was that's Edith in her litter box over there. Commission means someone gave an official request to have a project completed. So in June of 1776, which was a few months after Thomas Paine published his 50-page pamphlet called Common Sense, a few months after that, the Second Continental Congress appointed a 5-person committee to draft the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson is the most famous member of that committee. He gets the majority of the credit. But John Adams, Roger Sherman, Ben Franklin, and Robert Livingston were also on the committee that was tasked with drafting the Declaration. As Natalia will remember and be excited about, we actually could, potentially celebrate 3 Independence Days this summer if the quarantine lifts and we're able to party. Because independence was formally declared on July 2nd. Congress approved the final text of the Declaration on July 4th, which is what we call Independence Day. And then it wasn't until August 2nd that the Declaration of Independence was officially signed. So we really have 3 Independence Days. As an additional reminder, there are 4 main parts to the Declaration. The preamble, which is the beginning and kind of states the purpose of the document. The Declaration of Natural Rights, which talks about the rights that are inherent to all people. Of course, at the time that this was written, all people was pretty narrow. It was basically white men who owned property, not women or poor white people or people of color. But we'll kind of get into that at the end. The list of grievances, which is the list of complaints that the colonists had about King George specifically, and then also Parliament and the British government in general. And then finally, the Resolution of Independence, the okay, we outie statement. So, like I said, there is a document on the website that looks just like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over the first couple excerpts together, and then those of you who are interested in following along can follow along and then complete the other excerpt paraphrases as you go, and then there are some questions to consider. So let's get into excerpt number 1. So this is the very beginning of the Declaration of Independence. It's a very famous statement. So I'll read it and then I'll kind of walk through how I would annotate this if we were in class. So, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the cause which impel them to the separation. So one of the things that typically trips people up when they read this is this whole one people, because we think of people as a plural noun. I am one person, our class is a group of people, but to say one people kind of is confusing. So this is a use of the word people to mean a group that has something in common. In this case, the one people that are feel that it's necessary to dissolve political bands which have connected them with another. The one people is the colonists, and another is Britain. So that basically just means, look, we don't want to be a part of you anymore, but, and dissolve means like when you dissolve like sugar in your lemonade or something, that's one way of dissolving. Like in science, you take a solid and you dissolve it into a liquid, and it makes the liquid include the solid. You can check with Mrs. Wright for clarity on that. But dissolve in this case is a verb meaning to break or to terminate or to end. So when in the course of human events, so basically like in time, at a time when it's necessary for one group, the colonists, to dissolve or break the political bands which have connected them to another, Britain, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station. And this is important, equal. The colonists don't want to be subservient to the British anymore. They want to be an equally powerful country. They want to be treated by Britain the way that Britain treats other independent countries like France and Spain. And they feel entitled to this equality by the laws of nature and of nature's God. Now, we're not going to get into this too much right now, but there are conflicting opinions about to what extent Thomas Jefferson was a religious man. And we don't have time here to get into it, nor am I an expert in his religious beliefs. But it is clear from everything he wrote that he did believe in a higher power of some kind. And he believed that that higher power gave people certain rights that governments were not allowed to break. So when it becomes necessary, so at a time when one group of people wants to break away from another group of people and become equal, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the cause which impel them to separate. Impel means like force. So basically he's saying like, look, we don't want to be a part of you anymore, but we respect you enough to tell you why. So if we're going to paraphrase that, and I'll use a different color here just so that you can see the difference. We, the colonists, don't want to roll with you anymore, Britain. However, we are willing to tell you why that is. Okay, so we just took the first part of the Declaration of Independence, we kind of broke it down, made sure we understood all of the vocabulary, and then we paraphrased it. So let's move on to the second excerpt. And again, this excerpt is probably the most famous of any part of the Declaration. And it's, if you are familiar with the Declaration of Independence, it is the one that you are probably most familiar with. So, and this comes from the natural rights section. We hold these truths to be self-evident. These truths being the ones that they're about to state. that all men are created equal. So that's truth number 1. Truth number 2, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. Unalienable here means cannot be taken or broken or like done away with in any way. So that's truth number 2. Truth number 1, all men are created equal. Truth number 2, they're endowed with certain unalienable rights by their, and the part that's missing here is they're endowed by their creator. So again, not a clear reference to which creator, but an obvious reference to Jefferson's belief in a higher power. And that among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So, again, this is probably the most famous part of the Declaration of Independence. And it basically means, look, there are certain things that are true no matter where you are or who your parents are. And those things are that you are allowed to have a life. You are allowed to have liberty, meaning you cannot have your liberty taken from you, your freedom taken from you. And you're allowed to pursue whatever makes you happy. Now, of course, when you're forming a government, you have to decide if it makes me happy to, run through people's houses squirting a fire hydrant. I meant fire extinguisher. If it makes me happy to run through people's houses squirting a fire extinguisher at everything I see, that certainly doesn't make other people happy. And so I probably don't have an inalienable right to do that. But so that's when we talk about the Constitution later on, that's when we'll talk about how you differentiate between people's rights and the rights of the larger group. But for now, in this statement, he's saying, look, we are included in all men, even though we are maybe not born into nobility like King George and the members of Parliament are, but all men, it is true and obvious. Self-evident means like it's true and it's obvious without having any further explanation. So it's true and obvious that all men, and he really did mean men, so let's not sugarcoat it. He definitely, and again, he meant men who were white and owned property and were educated. But, everyone has their flaws, and Jefferson had myriad flaws. That might be a word of the week, myriad. It's a good one. Okay, it's true and obvious that all men are created equal and that everyone has rights no matter what. So no matter who your parents are, no matter where you were born, you have the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Now, those of you who remember when we talked about John Locke, so 9th graders, John Locke is the person who first wrote these words when he was describing the role of government. And he actually said life, liberty, and property. And Jefferson changed it to the pursuit of happiness. Again, I'm not an expert in Jeffersonian ideas, but I do have some books that talk a little bit more about that. So I might do some reading and then do an update next week. But here's what I would like you to do, because we are approaching the length of the video where I think people may be about done with watching me. So let's just take a look around my office really quickly. Those are the books again. There's the windows. There's my Red Devil pennant. Also, that's a mosaic I made when I was in 10th grade. Those are all little tiny pieces of paper. There's me having graduated from high school. And yes, so, okay. So we just analyzed and paraphrased the first 2 excerpts of the Declaration of Independence. So if you're following along, you can go ahead and complete the other 6. If you have questions about what one of the words means, look it up, or you could send me an email. I'm available all day and all week, really, and until closure is over because we're all quarantined. On that PDF that I posted online, there are also some questions about what you think about what the Declaration of Independence says. Do you think that it applies to everyone? Do you think that it is still a relevant document? The Declaration of Independence is probably the most famous and easily recognizable documents in American history, but it doesn't actually carry any weight. You can't go to court and say, well, I should not be charged with this crime, Your Honor, because the Declaration of Independence says I have a right to pursue what makes me happy, and it makes me happy to run through people's houses with a fire extinguisher, squirting the fire extinguishing mist at whomever gets in my way. So even though this document is super important, it is important as kind of a guiding principle, but it doesn't actually allow people to do anything specific. So good luck with your annotations and your paraphrase. If you have questions, or if you think about the way that the Declaration of Independence you think is still not being fully realized, I would love to talk to you about this. Like I have said before, when I was in college, I studied political science and my focus was on early American history. So I really like talking about the way that the Declaration of Independence both did and did not fulfill all these really lofty goals for what America could be. So happy quarantining. I still miss you. I really love hearing from all of you who have sent me emails. So if you have access to the internet, and if you're watching this, you obviously do, please just drop me a line. Let me know how you're doing. Edith and I are reading a lot of books and we're cooking a lot of food, but we would love to hear from you. Bye.